Well, welcome back, friends. It is Thursday, and we're back with this good-looking hunk of band right here.
February 8th.
Autrey, February 8th. What happened to January?
It's gone with the wind.
Wow.
So
time moves on pretty fast, doesn't it?
That it does. So we are all the way to Thursday. And Paul, I think this is one of the more difficult passages, at least in my this is for me personally, is maybe the most difficult text to parse out and understand in all the Gospels. So I'm going to read this, and I need some help with this. So I'm counting on your wisdom.
Oh, we'll have to phone a friend or something.
We may have to. So Mark 7, verse 24 and following. From there he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast out the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child laying on the bed, and the demon gone. So let's get to low-hanging fruit. Again, we're back to that point that in Mark's gospel, when Jesus shows up, there is a confrontation with the forces of evil. And that you'll see demons referred to in Mark quite often. And it's not, and again, we want to reiterate, don't think in terms of mental illness. We do a disservice to the text, and we do a disservice to those who struggle with mental illness by associating that that's what Mark was talking about. We're talking about a manifestation of evil that's present in the story that says that there's a conflict between God as good and evil, and that Jesus is there to win the battle, so to speak. But in this case, you get a demon again, but the mom comes, and we know the love that mothers have for children. She's not Jewish. So that's the first place to start.
So let's definitely, if you have your Bible, you want to pull out a map, biblical map, and note just how far north Tyre is. Tyre's up in what we would know as present-day Syria of today, or close to there. Tyre definitely would have always been disputed territory. It would have been back and forth between Israel territory and other kingdoms, but it is definitely known as Gentile territory. Jesus goes, he encounters this woman. It is important, I think, for us to know that not just here in Mark, but in other passages, other Gospels, it is clear that Jesus did come first to his own, to the Jews. It is imperative, I think, that we understand that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. He was Jewish himself. He came lock, stock, and barrel into that culture context. And so his primary first mission was to offer that word to the Jews.
To truly be a Jewish Messiah.
To truly be a Jewish Messiah.
But it's also interesting that it doesn't take Jesus long to leave the bounds of Israel, which I think is a way of saying that the gospel's not going to be contained within Israel.
Well, we certainly already see that Jesus has gone in a couple of other chapters. I think chapter 4, chapter 5, Jesus crosses the Sea of Galilee into Gentile territory. Yeah. So we already see Jesus active in those territories. This particular conversation with this woman, when he basically calls her a dog, is problematic for many. I choose to think that it was almost a little bit of a deliberate test to see how she would respond. And she certainly does respond with a great deal of faith. Mm-hmm. She does not let that deter her. She believes Jesus is who he says he is, and acts on that faith.
Well, more than that, I think she believes Jesus is who she heard him to be, because he's trying to keep on the down low again. Again, we see that secrecy idea. He goes in the house. He doesn't want anyone to know he's there, but yet she hears about him. She comes and finds him and asks him to do for her daughter what he's done for others.
I think there's one other element that I think is fascinating here. It's about this idea of when does our faith become strong? When life is good, when the everybody's well, when the bank account's good, when all is well. No, it's often, when we're in situations that feel we're over our head. Here's this woman obviously loves her child, wants that child to be well, and believes that this man has the power to do something about it, and she's willing to engage him on whatever level it takes.
Well, and I wonder if this isn't a way to acknowledge that the difficulty that those who first followed Jesus, who were almost exclusively Jewish, had in Christianity extended beyond the bounds of Judaism.
Oh boy, we look at the letter of Paul's letter in Galatians,
in particular, among others.
There is this real battle. Is this Christian faith to be an offshoot of Judaism, or will it be its own faith? But that battle had been raging for a long time. Obviously, we believe Mark's gospel was written down after Galatians, but it is a.
I think it does. It is an important thing to think about that. The early church, this kind of struggle between who's in and who's out, something we still struggle with. Mm-hmm. And we often want to draw the bounds and say we know clearly who's in and who's out. But here it's represented even within the person of Jesus, that struggle to take salvation beyond the Jews. And I do think it does kind of in a way, I think is a way of speaking to the community that's in the midst of that struggle, that this is not always easy, but ultimately God's desire is to extend God's love beyond.
Well, I think this may be an important word for even American Christianity. For it seems like we shifted the heart of Christianity from the Middle East to America at one point, at least in our minds, and we kind of felt like we owned a good bit of that, and then we would send missionaries to places like Africa and China and all that,
and India.
But the reality is this has always been God's plan. God has always worked in the lives of those whom God chooses, not whom we think God should choose. And just an important reminder, and it really even ties into this next part of chapter 7, Steve. I think.
Well, and he continues that. So when he comes down, and again, if you struggle with this passage and Jesus' response to this passage, it's okay. It calls for some discernment and some hard thinking, because again, it is one that you'll find a lot of different opinions about, and I encourage you to do some further research on that. But then you notice that in his journey in 31 of 7, he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee in the region of the Decapolis. Now, the Decapolis, there is 10 cities, 10 towns on the other side of the lake that were all established as Greek outposts. Mm-hmm. And the Greeks, when they came into an area, and this is under the conquest of Alexander the Great, almost 300 years prior, their goal was to turn a region into an extension of Greece. Mm. And maybe you remember on our trip to Israel, we got to visit one of those cities, and it was pretty cool. I mean, it looked like what I always imagined being a Roman city would, but it was actually a Greek city.
And here we have the second time in the Gospel of Mark in which we find Jesus speaking his native language, his native tongue, which would have been a form of Aramaic. When he says Ephatha, which means that is be opened. That's when he opens the ears of the deaf man. And so the other opportunity with Jesus says Talitha cum, which is little girl, get up. So second time Mark has reminded us that the native tongue of Jesus would have been Aramaic. And
we also see in this the Jesus after the healing don't tell anyone, but they more zealously, the more he told them that, the more zealously they proclaimed it. And again, they were astounded beyond measure, and he's done everything well, even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak. That's one of those ways of saying Jesus is indeed the Messiah. And again, it's outsiders proclaiming that Jesus is the Messiah, not the insiders, right? So
it's hardest for the insiders to see the possibility that he is the Messiah, but others are certainly responding in faithfulness.
So, and the skill Mark uses to remember first who recognizes him? Well, most certainly the demons. Then who begins to recognize him? The outsiders, such as the Gentiles, the Syrophoenician woman, and then followed by the people of the Decapolis, or the people who dwell in the Greek area. So again, it's like those closest, the Pharisees, the scribes, those who should have seen don't. Those who are on the outside do. So we'll pick that back up tomorrow with chapter 8.
Which is an awesome chapter. Read ahead. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you.